Hey there, I'm Raelee Peirce, PCI certified parent coach, and welcome back to Rooted in Relationship. I want to start today with a question that might sound strange, but when your child is upset, really upset, the kind of upset that fills the room, what happens inside of you? Do you feel an urgency to make it stop, a tightness in your chest? Maybe a voice in your head that says, this is too much. Most of us were raised with some version of this message. Big feelings are a problem. Crying is a weakness. Anger is dangerous. Fear is something to overcome. And if you're really falling apart, well, you need to get a hold of yourself. We absorbed these messages so deeply that we don't even recognize them as beliefs anymore. They just feel like truth. But what if they're not? What if everything we've been taught about emotions, our children's, and our own is actually backwards? That's what we're diving into today. Let me name some of the myths most of us are carrying around, often without realizing it. So, myth number one, emotions are optional. We talk about feelings like they're choices, like choose happiness. I noticed I put on my own uh, vision board this year for 2026. It says, happy thoughts. So, like, you can, if you have happy thoughts, like happy thoughts, be happy, or you are happy, or something like that. But, oh, and then other things, like I was thinking about don't let anger control you, or you don't have to feel that way. But here's the truth. Emotion is something that happens to us. Mhm. We don't choose it. It's not rational, though the brain has its reasons for doing it. Emotion stirs us up and moves us whether we want it to or not. When we treat emotions as choices, we set our kids up to feel like failures when they can't just stop feeling what they're feeling. So, myth number two, some emotions are good and some are bad. We're divided, we've kind of like divided the emotional world into positive and negative. So, joy, gratitude, excitement, we know those are the good ones. Anger, sadness, fear, frustration, those are the bad ones, right? The ones we need to minimize and manage or eliminate. But emotions don't work that way. They're not moral categories, they're just information. They're signals from the body about what's happening inside. And when we label some as bad, we teach our children that parts of themselves are unacceptable. Myth number three, if a child can control their behavior, they can control their emotions. This one gets so many of us as parents stuck because we see a child who can hold it together at school and then they're falling apart at home and we say or we think we're see they can control it when they want to. But here's what actually is happening. That child is suppressing their emotions all day, which takes enormous energy. And by the time they get home to their safe place, the dam breaks. The meltdown at home isn't evidence of manipulation. It's evidence of how hard they've been working to keep it together. Myth number four, self-control can be taught. This is a big one in our culture right now, something that I'm just really learning about. So we have entire curricula right now built around teaching children emotional regulation. And, look, I'm not saying awareness isn't helpful, but self control isn't a skill you can download into a child. It's the result of development. It emerges self-control, it emerges when the brain is ready, when certain conditions have been met. You can't rush it any more than you can rush a flower to bloom. We're going to have to come back to that one. So, if all of that is myth, what's the truth? Let me give you two definitions of emotion that have completely reframed how I think about this. First, emotion means to be stirred up. Something happens inside us or around us, and we get stirred up. Our nervous system activates, chemistry changes, we're moved. Second, emotion comes from the Latin e, meaning out, and movere, meaning to move. Emotion is that which moves us. It creates energy, it creates an impulse toward action. So when your child is having a meltdown, they're not choosing to be difficult. They've been stirred up by something, and that stirring is creating movement, energy that has to go somewhere. This is why Dr. Gordon Neufeld, as you know, my mentor, whose work has really shaped so much of how I understand children, says that emotion is as essential to express as, well, he uses a rather earthy comparison. I've shared this with you if you're coaching with me. He says it's as essential for emotions to be expressed as it is for the bowels to be emptied. This is something Aletha Solter as well. She also has said this many times, and I love Aletha Solter if you know her and her work. So anyway, stay with me here because this is actually profound. We would never tell a toddler, stop needing to go to the bathroom. It's messy, it's inconvenient, just hold it forever. That would be absurd. We know it has to come out. So we work on the how and where and the when. That's toilet training, right? But we never question that it must happen. Emotions are the same. They have to move. The question isn't whether they will, it's how. And if we keep pushing back on the emotion itself, telling our kids to calm down, stop making such a fuss, get a hold of yourself, we're essentially saying, don't feel. And they can't not feel. They're human. So what happens when emotions don't have a place to go? Well, they go sideways. I was working with a mom recently, let's call her Sarah, and her 7-year-old son was having explosive outbursts, throwing things, screaming, sometimes hitting, and she was completely bewildered because he used to be, quote unquote, such a good kid. And so as we talked, a picture started to emerge. This boy had learned early on that certain emotions, they weren't welcome. Anger made the adults uncomfortable. Tears were met with, you're okay, you're okay. Things I've said before too. So I have a lot of compassion around this. Frustration was quickly redirected. He'd gotten the message loud and clear. Those feelings don't belong here. So he had learned to push them down, to be quote unquote good, to perform emotional acceptability. But the feelings didn't go away. They just went underground. And eventually they started erupting like pressure that had been building with no release valve. This is what we call acting out. And most of the time when we see acting out, we focus on the behavior, the hitting, the yelling, the defiance. But underneath that behavior is an emotion that hasn't found its way out, an emotion that's been told it doesn't belong. The other thing that can happen is the opposite. Instead of exploding, some children implode. They go flat. They stop crying. They stop saying, I miss you. or I'm scared. They seem fine, easy, compliant, and we think, oh, good, they've got it together. But what's actually happened is they've lost access to their feelings. The vulnerability became too much, so the brain, it shut down. And here's the heartbreaking part. When we lose access to the painful feelings, we also lose access to the good ones. Joy, excitement, tenderness, those go flat too. It all goes together. We see this in kids who say, I don't care about everything. They seem unreachable, who've gone a bit hollow inside. This isn't a discipline problem. It's an emotional health crisis hiding in plain sight. Here's something that blew my mind when I first learned it, and I think about it all the time now. You know how we talk about emotional balance? We usually think of it like a scale. You balance your frustration with gratitude, your sadness with optimism. You try to keep things even, but that's not actually how balance works emotionally. Think about a bicycle. How do you balance on a bicycle? Through movement. When the bike is moving, you're stable. When it stops, you fall over. Emotions are the same. Balance doesn't come from holding still. It comes from letting emotions move. When feelings can flow, when they can be expressed and felt and moved through, we naturally come back to center. We get to the other side. But when emotions are stuck, when they can't move, that's when we lose our balance. That's when things get rigid or chaotic. That's when we or our kids feel like we're falling over all the time. So when we tell a child to calm down, to stop being so emotional, to get a grip, we're actually preventing the very movement that would bring them back to balance. The way through is through. Let me tell you about another family I worked with. A dad, I'll call him Marcus. He was struggling with his 5-year-old daughter. She'd started preschool and everything had fallen apart. Tantrums every morning, clinginess at drop off. And then when she got home, she'd pick fights with her little brother, meltdown over nothing, refuse to cooperate with anything. Marcus kept saying, what happened to my sweet girl? She was never like this. So we started looking underneath the behavior, and what we found was alarm, big alarm. This little girl was facing separation every single day, leaving home, leaving her parents, being in an environment where she didn't feel fully safe yet. Her nervous system was in overdrive. But here's the thing, she couldn't say, Daddy, I'm scared. I don't feel safe. I'm worried you won't come back. She's 5. She doesn't have those words, so her body expressed it instead through the tantrums, the aggression, the clinginess. Once Marcus understood that, everything shifted, not overnight, but his whole orientation changed. Instead of trying to stop the behavior, he started making room for the emotion underneath it. He'd say things like, it's so hard to leave Daddy in the morning, isn't it? You wish you could stay home with me. And she would melt into him. Sometimes she'd cry, real tears, not tantrum tears, those tears of letting go, tears of sadness about something she couldn't change. And those tears, those were everything. Because when a child moves from mad to sad, from the tantrum to the tears, something releases. The emotion moves. They get to the other side, and that's where resilience lives. Okay, so I want to come back to that myth about self-control being teachable, because here's what's actually going on developmentally. Self-control comes from having mixed feelings. It's when a child can feel 2 conflicting emotions at the same time, frustrated and caring, angry and connected, scared and brave. When both exist together, There's a natural pause. There's choice. But until age 5, 6, sometimes much later, the brain can only process one big emotion at a time. So a young child is either mad or they're loving. They're either scared or they're okay. There's no on the other hand yet. This is why your 3-year-old hits even though you've told them 100 times not to. They're not defying you. They don't have the neurological capacity yet to hold both their frustration and their caring at the same time. In that moment of big feeling, only one emotion fits. In the Waldorf tradition, which has deeply influenced how I parent and coach, we understand that we can't expect children to be truly civilized until around age 6, 7. Not because we don't believe in guidance or boundaries, we absolutely do, but because we understand that inner regulation takes time to develop. You can't force fruit to ripen. So when we demand self-control from a child who isn't developmentally ready, we're setting them up to fail. Or worse, we're teaching them to suppress, to push down, to perform control they don't actually have. And that suppression always has a cost. So here's where it gets personal. Before we can help our children develop a healthy relationship with their emotions, we have to look at our own relationship to their feelings. What happens in you when your child is angry, when they're whiny, when they're clingy or needy or falling apart? If certain emotions in your child make you uncomfortable, they certainly do in me, I know that, they will feel that. And they will learn without anyone saying a word that those parts of themselves are not welcome. Because I had to really look at myself. There were certain emotions, and there still are. I mean, it's not like I'm healed. There are certain emotions from my kids or my partner that they activate me, right? The whining, the complaining. There's a particular tone of voice in a little kid. I know that you know it. And that's really hard. I realized that those were the emotions that weren't welcomed in, well, I don't know if they weren't welcomed in me as a child. I feel like my parents did actually a really great job of actually accepting all of my emotions. So I don't really know. I can't really pinpoint. I don't remember my mom ever being like, that emotion wasn't welcome. I felt like she was very accepting, actually, of all of my emotional parts. So I'm not quite sure where this disdain for this whining or certain like frustration, if somebody is very frustrated, it makes me feel very uncomfortable. And I'm really, really trying to examine that, right? And think about why is that so, oh, why do I really get triggered by that? Why am I so activated by frustration? Um, because my mom certainly, she showed a lot of frustration growing up. And I don't know, I don't remember there being exactly words of like, you can't be frustrated or you can't be angry. Um, but I am trying what I'm trying now to do, and what I feel like in the past, since I've known about Neufeld and learned about this when my children were actually really young, but it was so hard to do when they were so little. But it's easier now as I'm, coaching parents through it to have more room for frustration, for someone doing something or having an uncomfortable emotion. I'm learning a lot about just accepting and making room for them. And that's such an interesting experience, guys. I'm excited for you to learn this and make room for these uncomfortable emotions that you might be seeing in your kids. Um, yeah, so that's been very interesting. I think Dr. Neufeld says something that has stayed with me as well. Our children's emotional health is a reflection of our relationship with their emotions. Right? Isn't that interesting? Our children's emotional health is a reflection of our relationship with their emotions, not their relationship to their emotions, ours. This is why I always say parenting is an inside job. I mean, it really is. Our children don't just need us to manage their behaviors. They need us to be a safe harbor for their entire emotional life, even the parts that are messy, inconvenient, and uncomfortable. There's a principle in the Baha'i writings that speaks to seeing the nobility in every soul, the essential goodness in every human being. When I look at my kids in the middle, when I think back to the meltdowns that I was privy to with my kids, I really think about that because this isn't a bad kid, right? This is a child with big feelings who hasn't yet developed the capacity to manage them. And our job isn't to shame them into control. Our job is to shepherd their emotional development, to protect their tender heart while it grows. So, what does this look like practically, right? We're always trying to make sure we get to that practical place of like, okay, Raelee, I hear you, but what am I doing? What am I doing? Well, we come alongside. And so many of you have heard me use that term. It's just so beautiful, coming alongside our child. And we're coming alongside our child's feelings means that we stop positioning ourselves against the emotion. We stop trying to fix it, minimize it, talk them out of it, or rush them through it. We validate, we name, we make room. We're just making room for this. It sounds like you're so frustrated right now. And I know some kids don't like that, and that's okay too. We can just be like, hey, this isn't working for you. So if some kids are like, I am not frustrated, that's something that I've talked about with a lot of parents who have kids that are just like, don't tell me how I feel. So we can just say, okay, this really isn't working for you. Or something about that felt really unfair. Or simply, I'm here, I'm with you in this. We'll get through this together. I love these things. I love thinking about saying that to my kid when they're struggling. Like, what a wonderful thing. Here you are having the worst time of your life, emotionally, like just falling apart. And someone that loves you says to you, I'm here. I get it. I can see why that would be upsetting. And we're going to get through this. I'm here. So powerful. That's just amazing. That's amazing. Now, this doesn't mean we allow all behavior. I'm not talking about being permissive. You know how I am. I am not about being permissive. We can hold both. This is very important, right? We can hold both. The emotion is always okay. All right. The emotion is always okay. You can be frustrated. You can be angry. You can be sad. You can be disappointed. Uh, the behavior, the behavior might need a boundary, right? But we're going to separate the two things, guys. This is really key to emotion coaching. We're separating the two things. We don't make the child feel that their feelings are the problem. And here is what's beautiful. When emotions have room to move, when they're not being fought or suppressed, the troubling behavior often takes care of itself. Not immediately, not magically, but over time, as the child develops and the feelings find they're going to find their proper channels. So I think what's happening with a lot of families, a lot of parents that are stirred up and activated by their children's what they've considered to be negative feelings, right? They've categorized them as negative. I think what's happening is they're reacting and activating towards the feelings and emotions of the child and wrapping that up with the behavior that is accompanying those emotions. So they're not making room for their child's sadness, frustration. They're lumping them together. And I think this is where the work lies, is in separating the two. This is really, to me, this is so cool because I think this is just, for me, this is so helpful. Like, I get it. I would feel that way too. And we might be the reason they're frustrated. We might have yelled at them, maybe we shamed them, maybe we embarrassed our kid. We didn't want to, we didn't mean to, we just do. We do crazy things as parents sometimes because we're so burnt out. I totally get that. We make mistakes. Yeah, we're not perfect. So we might be the cause of why our child is like super mad, frustrated, whatever, spinning out. And so we can say things like, hey, you know what? I totally get it. I would be mad at me too if I had been yelled at or if I felt embarrassed. Like, I get it. That was not okay. And hey, I I'm sorry. That wasn't cool. And I get why you're mad at me right now. And something to know is that, a child will go into defensive attachment, which means that that's that feeling, guys, when we've been so hurt that we're not capable of coming around to our warmth or our connection, our connecting feelings. And, I was listening to a workshop on this just recently, and one mom was sharing a story that she had prior to knowing about how timeout is not effective and it's not what we want to be doing. She had given her daughter a timeout for behavior and sent her to her room and told her, when the timer goes off, you can come back out and be with us. And she was in the living room with the grandparents and the siblings. So the little girl went into her room, did the timeout, and then the timer went off, and the mom noticed that the little girl hadn't come back out. And she was like, oh, I wonder what's going on. So she went and she found her in her room. She's like, hey, the timer went back off. You can come out. And the little girl didn't turn around. She just kept playing with her dolls. And she's like, I know, I don't want to. And the mom was like, oh, and so she went back out into the living room. But she now knows, because we were in this workshop together about defensive attachment, that, oh, this is something that can happen when we've hurt each other. All of us can go into defensive attachment. Any mammal can, a dog, a cat. I know that when I've been gone for longer than is bearable for my cat, he's a little weird when I get back, because it was too long. It was too long for us to be apart. And now he's kind of mad at me. We do the same thing with each other when the separation and discipline can be um, very detaching. It can be very disconnecting. And so it's another version of separation. So when the discipline or the separation, physical separation, has been too much for the person to bear, they can go into, yeah, detached, defensive attachment. And so these are kind of the things that we need to just be aware of, I think, as parents, as we navigate this. And I hope that this is helpful to you, and I hope it gives you some food for thought. Go back and re-listen, and maybe this time you could take some notes on thinking about these myths, and also thinking about how we really need to separate our own feelings from our behavior, and of course, most importantly, the emotions and feelings of our children from their behavior. We set boundaries around behavior, but all emotions are okay. So, okay, well, I want to leave you with this. We've inherited so many myths about emotions, that they're dangerous, that they need to be controlled, that some are acceptable and others aren't. That a good child is a child who doesn't make an emotional mess. But what if the mess is actually the point? What if the tears and the tantrums and the big feelings are exactly how children are supposed to process their world. Our job isn't to stop the feelings. Our job is to make room for them, to be the safe place where all emotions, even the inconvenient ones, are welcome. So this week, I invite you to notice what emotions in your child activate you. You don't have to fix it, just notice. Get curious about your own relationship to those feelings and see what opens up. Because when we stop fighting emotions and start making room for them, something shifts for our kids and for us. Thank you so much for being here. If this episode resonated with you, share it with another parent who might need to hear it. And if you want more support, you can find me, Inner Life Parenting, INNER, lifeparenting.com. Or you can find me too at heypoppins.com, where I work as a parent coach as well there. Until next time, remember, your relationship with your child is the most powerful tool you have. And their big feelings, they're not the enemy. They're the invitation. Take care of yourselves.